Hey everyone, today we're talking about a movie called Oddity, released July 19th, 2024, and directed by Damian McCarthy. I'm going to start off doing kind of like an overall summary of what the movie's all about, and then I'll give my thoughts and feelings on the movie, but of course it'll be spoiler free. After that, we'll get into spoilers, and I'll make sure I put like a timestamp down below, so if you'd rather just skip this part, you can jump ahead. Otherwise, if you haven't seen the movie yet, first options for you, I would avoid the second part of my video because this is definitely a movie you don't want spoiled. So I'm going to keep the spoiler-free portion pretty brief for this movie because I think it's probably best that you don't go in knowing a whole lot. Oddity is a movie that is focused and heavily focused on the murder of Dani and Dani's twin sister, Darcy, who's a psychic medium trying to unravel and figure out what the hell happened to her. Such a relatable topic because if something like that happened to you, you'd for sure do like anything to figure out what's going on, who did it, and why. The unique thing about this movie, though, is that Darcy has this ability to touch objects and read them, basically. So if something was like a ring somebody had been wearing, she'd be able to hold it and tell you all the person's secrets, anything that they had seen, how they were feeling. It's pretty significant and it makes her a pretty awesome investigator, to be honest. The other really great thing about this movie is if you like a mystery thriller, home invasion, conjuring, paranormal feel, that's all wrapped into this movie. All of it. Something like, let's say, Hush, or you like the Conjuring film, something paranormal with a mix of mystery. I think you are going to really enjoy this movie. I would say it's more of a popcorn flick. It's not something that's going to blow you out of the water. They're not doing something completely outrageous or never done before, but it's definitely like an enjoyable watch. Trying to figure out exactly what's happening, I would say doesn't take very long. However, they really do, once they get that tension started, which happens pretty quickly, they keep it up the whole movie. And that's something that I really appreciated about it. Something that I didn't like about the movie myself, though, was I did feel that for a mystery, now hear me out, I wasn't a huge fan of how predictable some of the mystery was. So in this film, you definitely are going to be able to figure out kind of what's going on in the first 20 to 30 minutes. But don't get me wrong, they somehow, even though they told the story this way, are able to manage holding the tension with you for the rest of the film, which I loved. And there's like little bits of humor in here too, at least in my opinion. Maybe normal people wouldn't think it was funny, but there's a couple scenes they're pretty funny. Overall, do I think this is like the horror movie of the year? No, it's not. But it is a good popcorn flick, like I was saying. It's something you can just lay down, crash. You have nothing better to do. There's nothing else to watch on Netflix. You've seen the whole Netflix library already. Don't act like you haven't. It's a good movie and definitely better than something you're gonna see for free on Tubi. So you should give it a shot. So we're going to hop into the spoiler portion of the video. So if you haven't seen the movie yet and you want to keep it fresh, and like I warned you, you shouldn't look anything up about this, not even the movie poster. I'm telling you, you don't want to see anything, then you need to leave now. And if you want to see my thoughts on the rest of the film, you can come back and watch this later. So we're going to do like kind of a heavy breakdown on this one. I wanted to go scene by scene because there was a lot more to unpack here than even what I first thought. So my video is probably going to be a bit long. Sorry. The movie opens up with a camera panning over water and through some winding road, which is leading us all the way to Dani. All the while, there's some like unsettling high pitched music sort of playing in the background, which I thought really set the tone for the movie. But we see Dani, who we don't get to know for very long because she's about to get tenderized pretty quickly. Anyway, Danny's doing kind of like housework around the house, just looking around. This is like one of the first scenes where we get to see the trap door on the second floor of the house. And if you were curious like me, I kind of wanted to know what the trap door was for because later on in the movie, when that is utilized, I was kind of like, why was there an opening in the floorboards anyway? That seems unsafe, and I don't really understand the purpose. So apparently some old houses used to use these to move like grain up and down different floors. I also read that they could have been used as like a little hatch for getting to different levels of your house. So if bad weather had affected anything like flooding or snow, you had another route through your house. You could go up this trapdoor, hatch, whatever you want to call it. But I needed to know what it was for because It was just a very convenient thing to have in your home if you're a murderous on like a murderous rampage. This is where they also give us the opportunity to kind of see where Danny's staying since the house isn't even furnished at all. Like there's not a bed, there's not pictures, there's no dressers. It is nothing. It is nothing. So we get to see that she is staying in this tiny little yellow tent near her front door, and she has a camera that's just going off and flashing constantly. We do find out the reason she has the camera doing this because she calls her sister and says that she's only catching like orbs floating through the house, and she's really trying to catch a ghost or something haunting the place, especially since the house is old. The other thing I find sad about the camera portion of this and knowing that Dani set up this Canon camera on the side is that she was really disappointed she can't catch any ghosts on it, and the camera ends up catching a ghost, but it's her. She's the ghost haunting the house. So after we get a layout of the house, Dani calls her husband Ted. Now, Ted is an asshole. Ted is an asshole for the whole movie, and I really didn't like him immediately. He's an unlikable character. He is supposed to be an unlikable character. However, in my opinion, I felt like that took away from the movie for me because he's already going to be your number one suspect. I mean, he's like your basic bitch true crime husband who's obviously going to murder his wife. Maybe not by his own hands, as we find out later, but he most definitely comes off like the guy who would. I wish that they wouldn't have made Ted so unlikable right away. Or I think if they would have waited a little bit longer on it, it would have helped me at least enjoy that portion of it a little better. That's part of the thing that took away the mystery for me. And that's okay. That doesn't make the movie bad. I still liked the movie. After Dani gets done talking to Ted, she gives her sister Darcy a call, and unfortunately, Darcy doesn't answer. And this is the last call Dani makes to Darcy. She basically lets Darcy know she found a signal at her house. And the signal, she's just referring to her cell phone signal. It's an old house, so she has like one spot in the upstairs near that trap door that works. And that's where we get that part of the call where she says, "We're connected." And that comes back over and over again. Not only are they twins, but it's kind of like she's saying we're connected, not only over the phone, but as sisters, as twins, as family. I thought that was kind of a nice touch to the movie. I like that that comes back a few times. I think that that's something special that they did. At this point, the movie's going to cut to it being later at night when Dani's at her house still. So she's by the yellow tent and she forgot something in her car. I think it was keys. So she needs to run out there really fast and go grab them. But while she's outside, she is hearing weird noises. So she's looking around and kind of acting a little nervous, which I would be too. It's late at night. You're by yourself. There's like nobody around here. It is nothing, which was kind of giving me that feeling of like the Strangers sort of. Again, Strangers isn't really one of my favorite movies or anything, but I get the tension feeling from it. Dani makes her way back inside the house, and at this point is when she continues to hear noises, and she still has her keys in the door, opens that little metal sliding door, and it's going to reveal Olin, which is our first part of the movie where we get to meet him. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, Olin looks rough. The dude is unhoused and unwell. At least that's how he looks. And you can tell on Dani's face that she's nervous about it. It just gets worse from here though, because without the rest of the movie context, the things that Olin is saying to her are very alarming. At one point I think Dani asks him if he's like what he's doing here. He seems so sketchy that I think he might mention her husband, and she asks if he's a patient of his. And all he responds with is, "I heard them in the walls." Bro, this woman clearly thinks that you're a danger, and you're only gonna say that to her. You need to give her context. This again was where I was yelling at the screen and just like saying, "Please, please, anything else. Tell her anything else. What are you doing?" But this is why I love horror movies, because if we didn't have people make bad decisions or say weird things, whatever, the movie would be done in 5 minutes. So I'm okay with that. I personally have no issue when horror movies do this because if the characters aren't just a little bit stupid, it's not as fun to watch. And I had a lot of fun watching this one. Like I said earlier, this is like a popcorn flick. It's a good time. Plus, if Olin saved the day right now, you wouldn't get to see Darcy later be like a little mini Brienne of Tarth just running around being awesome. So Olin says that he saw somebody sneak in the house behind Dani, which at that point you can see in Dani's eyes that she's she's questioning whether what he's saying is true because she just heard him say, I heard them in the walls as well. So she can't decide, do I trust this guy or not? I'm home alone. I have nobody home with me. I think he even at one point mentioned that he knows she's home alone because she said her husband will be home soon. And he's like, I know your husband works nights. But the movie leaves you on a cliffhanger. It looks like she's about to open the door and then it cuts away. So the movie flashes forward to a man sketching at his desk. There's a bunch of like drawings all over his walls, which I didn't get a great look at, so I'm not exactly sure what was all in the drawings, but I'm sure it's interesting if you pause the movie and look and blah blah blah. I didn't do that. So there's some old-timey music playing, which I thought suits this scene fairly well. I did actually weirdly enjoy the music more than I thought I had now that I'm thinking about it. In the background is like a screaming noise or just like a monster noise is happening. And if you listen really, really closely, you can actually kind of hear like a woman's voice beneath it, which makes sense when you get towards the end of the movie. What I like too about this is the guy leaves his room. Well, doesn't leave completely. He opens the door. He clearly sees the monster, turns, has this most horrified face, and then goes and hides under his bed. You can tell the monster's like passing by. This guy's looking worried. It quiets down and he gets up, goes to the room where he was hearing the noises come from initially. And that's when we see Olin's head completely bashed in like a watermelon. And I think the guy picks up his glass eye, so I don't know how the glass eye survived being smushed, but it did. But the head smush stuff was that's the most gory looking thing. But props to this movie, I will say, if you're a person who doesn't like seeing the gore being committed, so to speak, this was probably a movie you're gonna like because they don't necessarily show you the gruesome stuff happening. You just kind of insinuate what happened or what must have happened. You do see the aftermath of some of it, but I'd say overall the gore level in this movie isn't like top notch or anything. There is a little bit of gore, but I don't think it's that bad. Personally, if you've watched a horror movie before, you'll be fine. And this scene is really short. They already move on to the next one after this, but I thought this was an effective scene. It was kind of nice to see. I don't know that it was totally necessary to have in the film. I think there was a few scenes that we could have cut out. This one probably being one of them. I get why because it comes back a little bit later, but it's so short that I don't know, it didn't seem like it was totally necessary. So we cut to the next scene where Ted walks into the antique shop. This is the antique shop that's owned by Darcy. So this is the first time we see them interacting together. And also the first time that we see that Darcy's actually blind. And we find out she's a psychic medium. This is where because she doesn't know Ted's there right away, she warns if you steal something, all of my stuff is cursed. And if you take it, you will be gone. And you'll most likely bring it back. Because if you don't bring it back, you're probably dead. And Ted kind of giggles at it. I think he kind of just gets a little bit of a kick out of it because he does not believe in the paranormal at all. He doesn't believe in anything Darcy says about being a medium or any of her abilities. He thinks it's a bunch of nonsense. He even says he's a man who thinks like logically and with science, which is fine. You can do that, but you don't need to be mean to her. Leave the woman alone. She lost her sister. She has like nothing left except you. And this is a scene where the bell comes in. You see it for the first time. She tells you the backstory to it. It's a bell that was used at a hotel before. The bellboy now haunts it because a drunken guest pushed him down the stairs. He broke his neck. This bell has been rang, I think, 2 other times since he had passed away, and both people who've rung the bell have died. After Ted and Darcy talk for a little bit, he gives her the eye, so Olin's eye, and she had requested this because she wants to touch it. She even explains to Ted why she wants it. She says she wants it because she wants to basically understand why Olin did this to her sister. Why would he come here? Why would he do this? She was so nice. There's just no plausible reason. And the reason is because he didn't do it. And Darcy's going to find that out real quick because once Ted leaves, she goes upstairs, touches the eye, and she gets the vision. She sees exactly what Olin saw and knows exactly what happened to Dani. Ted screwed up. Ted should have probably believed in this stuff because if he had, he wouldn't have given her that eye. That's all he had to do. He could have just crushed the eye and not given it to her at all. But because he's so arrogant, he gave it to her. He knew exactly what she was going to do with it, and then it screws him over in the end. Also, I love this scene because I loved how Darcy like barrels downstairs and she goes to her like creepy junk in the back room and there's the chest there and she's just got like female rage. Like she opens it up and she just looks like she's like shaking a little and then she just looks up. It's super intense and I loved that part because you're just like, oh, what's in there? And that's the part where I was mentioning if you hadn't seen this movie, don't look at the movie poster because as soon as she touched the chest, I had seen just the movie poster. I didn't see like anything about the movie or look up anything about the movie. But as soon as she touched the chest, I knew it was inside the chest just from seeing the movie poster. And it would have been kind of cool not to know what was going to be inside there. So, did anyone else know that? When they saw her open it, did they think that was what was in it? Because I immediately was like, oh, crap. So after we see Darcy open the chest, we end up back at Ted's house. He wakes up in the morning and we get to meet Yana for the first time, his girlfriend, who I think he had mentioned in the previous scene he's been seeing for like a year already. Or no. His wife's been passed away for a year and now he's been with Yana. So he didn't take much time to get with somebody else. Yana also very unlikable. She has resting bitch face. Like the whole movie. I didn't like her either. Honestly, I wish Dani wasn't nice to her and I wish she would have pushed her off the balcony upstairs, but she didn't. So Yana's sitting on the couch downstairs and she has Dani's camera, so the camera that we saw at the beginning, and she's kind of like flicking through the photos and she's casually talking to Ted. She mentions that the camera is his dead wife's camera, and weirdly when they're talking to each other, he kind of is like, oh, okay. I didn't know she had a camera or something along those lines. And Yana is saying that there's pictures of them on it and asks if he wants to keep them. And another big red flag, Ted's like, no, I just get rid of it. I don't want to keep the pictures. And she's like, it'd be kind of weird if you didn't want to keep pictures of your dead wife who only died like a year ago. After Yana points out it'd be really weird, he suddenly is like, yep, okay, keep some pictures. Because I'm sure he was thinking, like, oh, she's right. I should keep that for my alibi. I don't want anybody to be like suspicious of me or anything. Yana is talking about how she's irritated staying at this house. His wife was murdered here. She's uncomfortable. He works late at night. She doesn't want to be alone, which is completely understandable. And she even starts to show him proof that the paranormal stuff is real. She shows him the camera with hard evidence that she said she took a picture 2 days ago, and you can see Dani's ghost in the camera. And Ted still doesn't want to believe it. He's still making up excuses. I'm sorry, but if somebody showed me a picture of my dead significant other, I'm believing that. I'm leaving. Don't pull out any Ouija boards or anything like that. I'm out. And after he makes excuses as to how that can't be real, whatever. I forget exactly his reasoning, but Yana even mentions that she saw the ghost of Dani upstairs, and we get like a flash of that. It's very awkward. He gets mad. He basically tells her to stop acting crazy. She's talking like Darcy, so he's already making like jabs about Darcy again because I don't think he really truly likes her. He thinks she's stupid. Yana then mentions, speaking of Darcy, there's a chest downstairs. She sent us something. So they don't know what's in the chest yet. They didn't open it. They had gone, back and forth talking. And then Yana notices that Darcy's standing outside. So now they're going to have to let her in. And this is something that I liked because it reminded me of a home invasion movie. Because not only do we get the actual home invasion in the beginning with Dani, and we're going to find out what happens to her, but this part too, it's kind of like Darcy's invading their space. And I really, really like that. Like, she's not welcome. And I'm sure the other guy who came in wasn't welcome, clearly. But I like that she kind of just steps in and she acts stupid when she's there. And it just makes everybody mad. And it's nice to see them angry because I like Darcy and I want Darcy to win. Ted and Yana are irritated. They're giving each other like glances back and forth because Darcy's blind. She can't see us. So they're being jerks. But Darcy's there. She insists she's going to spend the night because she already made it all this way. Ted refuses to stay home. He's going to go to work because he can't call in sick. So he's going to leave Yana alone with Darcy, which Yana's very mad about. But, nonetheless, that's what they're doing. So Ted leaves, goes to work, and Yana is stuck here with Darcy. And I don't know exactly when they opened the box, but they open the box, they get an idea of what's inside, which is that big wooden man who's going to come out soon. Are back at the hospital. We see Ted there. This is kind of like a throwback to that scene that I said I didn't think was totally necessary to keep in, where Olin had his head crushed. The guy who found Olin is now he's in the hospital. And as Ted's looking through the patient records, he does see the drawings of the wooden man. I guess I do kind of like that stuff because it is making connections throughout the movie. So things are getting thrown like a throwback to what you saw at the beginning, or just little stories somebody told you. It is nice that they interconnected a bunch of the characters just so you can like follow along as you go. It makes it a little more fun to watch. Which, now that I think about it, it's kind of cool because it's like the connection between Dani and Darcy, but while you're watching it as a viewer, you get to make all these little connections between all the characters. So I guess that's kind of cool. We're back at the house and Yana is there. The doll is actually out of the box now and somehow ended up sitting at the dinner table. And it's really funny because Yana's saying, "Why did you move him?" So she's like accusing her, and Darcy's just like, "I didn't move him. I have no idea what you're talking about." And this whole scene's really fun because there's banter between Yana and Darcy. There is a part where basically Darcy accuses Yana or asks Yana, "What would you have done if somebody had come to this house or comes to the house in the middle of the night?" So she's asking her, if you were Dani and a patient comes to the house, are you going to open the door? And Yana basically just says, "No, I'm not that stupid." So Darcy gets offended when Yana basically calls Dani stupid because Dani didn't open the door for the patient. Dani was smart. Dani was like, I don't trust this guy. I'm not opening the door. He knows I'm home alone. It's not safe." Unfortunately for her, Olin was actually a good guy. He was telling her the truth, which I would have died too because I wouldn't have opened the door for him either. And if you think you would have, I doubt it. I don't think you would have opened the door for that guy. F you, you're lying. So Dani is kind of walking through that front portion of the house where her tent is, and I think her camera was still going off this whole time when she was talking to Olin. She ends up walking around. The tension is really high here because you're kind of wondering if if he told her the truth or not. Is he really going to go get some help? I don't know that we can trust him. So she's walking around. She grabs a hammer. She grabs her camera, and it made me really upset because she puts the hammer down, which again is another one of those horror moments where you're saying, "Please don't do that. What are you doing? It's your only protection." She gets back inside the tent, left the hammer on, I think, a shelf or a table, gets inside, zips it up, looks at her camera, and this is where we see Olin was telling the truth. There is a masked man. He's standing right outside the tent in the photo, so he wasn't lying. There's a dude in there. And that's another part I liked about the movie. I thought it was cool. It convinced me that Olin might be a good dude or might be a bad guy. And I was wrong. I would have been ended up totally like Dani. So well, no, I wouldn't have because I wouldn't have crawled inside a tent by myself. I would have probably just ran with my keys to my car and left. But it is what it is. So after she looks absolutely horrified seeing the images on her camera, she slowly opens the zipper on the tent and good jump scare comes in. At least it got me. I'm easily jump scared. I don't know why. It's just a thing. But she opens up the tent, head comes down, he kneels down holding the hammer that she set down on the shelf. And this is another part that I appreciated from the movie. It goes black and then cuts back in, and you see blood all inside of the yellow tent and all over him. So, and you still didn't see the mask off, so at this point you're not supposed to know who the killer is. This was a part that I thought the movie did really well. I actually did like that they cut this part to black and then showed you the next part where it was bloody inside the tent. The man himself is all bloody. It looked really cool. Sometimes you don't really need to have those super gory scenes, which I do like gory scenes in horror movies, but I thought this did fine. I didn't really need to see what he did to her. I got a pretty good idea seeing the size of that hammer. I think it forces you to soak in and see, like, feel your feelings on what must have happened there. You can imagine pretty well what happened to Dani. You don't really need to see it. And I applaud them for that. The splatter itself, good enough. I liked it. I thought that was an awesome addition. So at this point, I think we get a flashback of, I want to say, Ivan being a bully to someone in the hospital. Sorry, I can't remember exactly what happened here, but I know for sure it cut to Ivan because it was kind of like a dead giveaway as to who committed the murder. Cutting from the mask guy to him, kind of obvious. But that's okay because we get to see Ted talking to Ivan. And it's kind of funny because you can kind of tell Ted's just a jerk. So Ted had this guy murder his wife, and now they're having this conversation together. It's after she's gone, everything. And Ivan's trying to convince him to go on a trip with him. And Ted just kind of shrugs it off like, "No, I like to sleep in on the weekends. I want to hang out with Yana. I'm busy, bro." So he basically is refusing to hang out with the guy that he hired to murder his own wife, which I guess good for Ted. He doesn't want to make that connection. But poor Ivan just looks so defeated. But while the conversation's happening, Yana ends up calling and Ted answers. This is when Yana is saying, like, "Yo, Darcy is saying she thinks Ivan killed your wife. Like, she's convinced." And he asks her how she would know, and this is when she says, like, she's claiming she learned it from touching the eye. And I love how Ted stays so skeptical up until the very end of the movie. He never ever believes her. So Ted's on his way home, and it cuts back to Yana and Darcy in the house. I think Darcy is asleep on the couch at this point. The wooden man's still at the table, and I think Yana is upstairs near the trapdoor area. Yes, because that is where the signal is. So she's upstairs. She looks down. Another jump scare because the wooden man is like looks up and it's a very jolting image because he's just looking up and he has this gaping mouth open. I thought that was cool. I don't think that jump scare got me. For sure, the man in the tent thing did, but not this part. I do think this part of the movie was what another good thing. I thought they actually had decent jump scares, which movies don't always have, and they can be cheap sometimes. But I thought the ones in this one were pretty effective, pretty good. Yana ends up going back downstairs. The wooden man's looking forward again. Again, Darcy's asleep on the couch. Yana at this point does the dumbest crap I've ever seen. She walks up to the wooden man, sticks her well, I think almost sticks her hand fully in its mouth, and I was like, half expecting it to close its mouth and chomp her fingers. So it's a good fake out. I totally believed something was going to happen. It didn't. But she like, goes around in circles behind it, and that's when you see a symbol on the back of the wooden man's head and a couple of holes. I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't poke my hands in there. I don't wanna know. But Yana did want to know. I don't know why these people want to know these things. I would walk home. I don't care where my keys are. I'd just leave. But this scene's actually pretty cool because you get a closer look at the wooden man. She ends up getting some forceps, I think, from like the back room or something. And she starts taking things out. I thought it was kind of neat to see. There's, I think, a picture of the sisters when they're young. So Darcy and Dani, a picture when they're older. I believe a tooth and a blood vial and a piece of hair. And I think it's a bright piece of blonde hair. So you can tell it's all stuff related to like Darcy and Dani, which is your first insinuation that obviously Darcy has some sort of control over this thing. She's packing. She came here with this thing to do some damage. Darcy wakes up. She's mad. She yells at Yana to put all this stuff back, and Yana does, which I'm surprised. I would have just left the stuff on the table and ran away, but Yana puts it all back in the head, and she goes upstairs to lay down. And this is where we get our like Beetlejuice montage, I want to say. Do you know that part of Beetlejuice in the beginning when the married couple's like trying to scare everybody out of the house, the Dietz family? So they're doing like all these stupid things, putting a sheet over the head, whatever. Dani, the ghost, basically does this to Yana. Yana's laying in bed. She watches a video. I think the video is playing Dani and Ted inside of the yellow tent together. So she plays it once, sees them talking. She goes to lay down all the way in bed, plays the video again. And this time, instead of the camera turning and showing Ted in the video, Dani turns the camera in the video away from herself to not Ted. It's the ghost Dani, which really, really scares Yana. And this was another, I think, okay part. It wasn't that scary, unfortunately, but the camera flashes and she sees Dani the ghost in the room with her. She ends up running downstairs. Yana is so scared. She grabs like, I don't know, some tiny little butter knife. I don't know what you're gonna do against a ghost with that. At this whole point, Dani ends up, I think, opening the chest or closing the chest to hint to Yana to go look at what's in there, and that's where her keys are. So Yana goes to leave the house. She's scared. She's completely scared. I would be too. I'm again though, as a viewer, I don't think the scene was as scary as maybe they wanted it to be, but Dani's not trying to hurt her. She's just trying to scare her away. Yana goes to her own car with her keys, and she does see Dani's ghost lean out of the doorway a little bit, kind of like to warn her, get out of here. And it works. Yana leaves. So at this point, it's just Dani's ghost and Darcy in the house. So Ted arrives home with the intention to find Yana. And at this point, Yana is long gone. The lights are all off in the house. He grabs a lantern, goes upstairs, and he finds just Darcy curled up in a ball, like right where the phone signal would be, and right in front of the trap door that we saw earlier in the movie. And this whole conversation's great. You kind of see Ted working his magic, convincing her that she's got to be a little crazy. He even brings up a past health condition she had that he said caused her to make things up or to see things or something. And you can tell Darcy's kind of falling for it this whole time. But we do get a flashback of him talking to Ivan, further proving that Darcy is right. She had mentioned, I think she had mentioned that Olin had heard them talking, and that's when we get the flashback of Ted talking to Ivan, planning out the murder of Dani. And this is a really infuriating conversation between the two of them. It starts off with Ivan being the more logical one, if you can imagine that. So Ivan even says, like, why don't you just divorce her, dude? And Ted's basically just like, because She's so in love with me, she'll never get over it. I hate him so much. I wanted to see him die so bad. This entire movie, I wanted him to have the most brutal murder. So Ivan asked him. He does the whole she's too in love with me. She couldn't live without me. But really, he even mentions though, well, we just bought this house and she's gonna get it in the divorce. So just murder her. And then it's funny because Ivan's trying to like say, well, we need like a reason for the murder. Maybe we can make it look like somebody like ransacked the house or tried to steal stuff. Why don't you furnish it first? And Ted's being the logical man that he is like, no, I can't do that. I don't want to mess up my house with her blood. So like kill her when she's in the tent. Thanks. Ivan also insinuates they could have another reason behind attacking Dani. Not my favorite reason. Very concerning. It even concerned Ted actually, which was funny. He's like, well, no, I don't want to hurt her. And then it was funny because I think Ivan just goes, yeah, you just want to murder her. Nobody's right in the situation at all. All the people in this movie suck. Everyone's making bad decisions. Ted sucks. Ivan sucks. Darcy's pretty cool, but she was dumb for believing in Ted. She should have just never let him sway her. After we got the flashback of Ted and Ivan talking, that's when Ted's gonna leave. He wants Darcy to talk to the detective that was on Dani's case, and he's gonna leave his phone across from her. This is where the trapdoor comes in because he had moved it while he's talking to her. She can't see, so she doesn't see him do it. So he leaves his cell phone there. He's going to go to the office, call the phone, supposedly to have the detective call, but it's just him, so he can trick her. And it works. Darcy does step forward. She falls through the trapdoor. Everything goes according to Ted's plan because, of course, everything's going to Ted's plan. It always works out for him, it seems. Why didn't Dani's ghost say something? She can clearly whisper because she was whispering "run, run, run" to Yana earlier, when she was trying to like scare her out of the house. So in my mind, I'm like, wait, why didn't Dani's ghost whisper to her sister? Because she could have warned her to not step forward and fall through the trap. Because I mean, if you think about it, Darcy, she's blind, she's not deaf. Why didn't Dani tell her sister to not step forward? But to each his own. I don't. Ted ends up talking to Ivan. He tells him, hey, murdered another person in my house. So, like, if you could go take care of that for me, that'd be great. Ivan agrees to go do his dirty work again. I don't know why, though. He's just basically taking the downfall for Ted the whole movie. Ivan ends up back at the house. Ted's no longer there. He goes to check on Darcy, and he does, in fact, see her. She is definitely not going to make it. He goes upstairs to look at her through the trap door, but also he needs that phone signal to call. So he calls Ted to let him know that Darcy is definitely a goner. If she's not gone quite yet, but she definitely will be. Ted's pretty happy about this. This is kind of another exciting scene that happens. I'm not sure that it was the greatest, though. The only issue I have with this scene is Ivan ends up hanging up the phone with Ted. He's upstairs. He can suddenly hear that the wooden man is moving downstairs, which we've only seen the wooden man move when you're not looking directly at, kind of like I think the angels, the statues of angels, and I want to say Doctor Who. I kind of wish they would have kept that going for the whole part of this scene. It would have been scarier to me. It took me out of it a little bit seeing the wooden man moving. I would have preferred he not move like so blatantly in front of us. It wasn't the worst, but I would have preferred we just not see him move. I liked it. I thought it was creepier when we weren't seeing like him doing it directly. But Ivan gets scared. He tries to go downstairs when man's moving. He runs back upstairs. He himself jumps off the top banister, which honestly wasn't that far down, and managed to like break his leg pretty bad. Like the bone is like just jutted out of his leg. I don't know. He had real weak bones. He was like Sam Jackson in Unbreakable. I don't know what happened there. But the wooden guy comes back downstairs. It's being controlled by Darcy. Darcy even saw her sister like above her in the trapdoor, the ghost of her sister. And as Dani's laying there dying, she had already said she was connected to like activate the wooden man. He's stomping forward. She's controlling him. It looks like he's about to take out Ivan, but because she sees her sister at the top of the trap door, Dani kind of looks down at her, kind of smirks at her, kind of letting her know everything's okay, sort of like, oh, you did your job, you did the best you could. And it looks like the sisters kind of just have a nice moment together, and Darcy dies. But unfortunately, she didn't get to finish the work she was doing with Ivan, so the wooden man doesn't get to finish killing Ivan off. Ivan ends up at the hospital that he works at, where Ted is, and he's been committed by Ted because when he got brought in, he was telling the nurses that a giant wooden man attacked him. And this works out great for Ted. Like everything just falls into place for him for the whole movie, which I'm sure is on purpose. It makes it easy to continue not liking Ted, but Ted basically tells him, "You're nuts. I can prove that you're nuts, and I had you committed here, and it is what it is." And Ivan is trying to say he wants a priest to confess things to. Ted says no because Ted doesn't want to get in trouble. He doesn't want Ivan to tell anyone anything. He doesn't want to go to jail. He doesn't want anyone finding out but what he's been up to. This is his whole goal, his whole life. He's a cheater. He murdered his wife. He just has everyone do everything for him. And he's not about to let Ivan ruin that. So Ted is going to let a man in that we saw earlier in the movie, which I hadn't mentioned, but there is a man in the hospital too who's wearing kind of like a Hannibal Lecter mask. And Ted basically tells him, patients die all the time. People don't question things much over here. So I'm going to have this other patient murder you. And that's what happens. And that's when he lets that man in the room who starts eating Ivan by chomping on his toes. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not really into the like weird foot things that are happening in horror movies lately. I saw Talk to Me and I wasn't a huge fan of the foot scene in that one, and not a huge fan of the foot scene in this one either. I don't need more feet in my I don't need more feet. Just keep them away. But seriously though, what's with the foot fetish thing that's going on? Can someone explain why that is popping up in horror movies lately? Because I find it very strange. And this is when we're coming to the closing of the movie. So Ted is on his way home. He gets a call from Yana. We found out that Yana wants nothing to do with him anymore. That's probably the only thing I liked about Yana in the whole movie. I hated her the whole time in a good way. It's good when the movie does a good job making you dislike characters. I can appreciate that. So Ted gets home, he listens to that voicemail. There's a weird package on his floor and he brings it inside his house. And as soon as I saw that tiny little package, I realized that that was the bell that Darcy had mentioned in the beginning of the movie because again, he didn't believe it at all. And that that was her contingency for if something didn't work out for her. She knew he was going to ring the bell. He's so arrogant. It was the perfect plan. There's nothing better to foil his plan than to just like play off of his arrogance, and it works out because he sits there for a while staring at it, and like you can tell he's kind of looking around wondering if it's possible that what she said was true, and it actually kind of draws out the scene quite a bit, which I liked. It built up the tension and even made you question, like Ted, oh, I wonder if Darcy might have been wrong about this. But luckily, he does ring the bell. Again, draws out the tension, making you think, well, maybe Ted is right. Maybe he is the logical one. Maybe nothing's going to happen. And that's when we get that final part where we get to see the ghost in the corner of the bellboy standing next to Ted, and Ted with that stupid asshole smirk on his face. So that is where the movie ends. We don't get to see Ted's end because again, the movie doesn't seem to show any like of the gory, super gory bits, at least like the part where they're happening. It just kind of leaves it up to the imagination. So you can guess what happens to Ted. That part I wish I could have seen something happen to Ted because I just spent the whole movie hating him for like an hour and a half. So would have been kind of cool to see that death. My final thoughts on the movie are that I thought it was overall a good movie. It was a good popcorn flick. I definitely didn't regret renting this. I thought it was perfect for a late at night movie. There's nothing else to watch. It had mystery, paranormal kind of feeling to it. It also had that like home invasion aspect, which I thought was great. So it was a big mashup of like all the other side genres, and I thought they did a really good job with it. My major gripe again with the movie is I wish the mystery had been a bit more of a mystery. I think they made it too obvious who was really behind everything just because if there was too many hints dropped and making Ted in particular so unlikable and making Ivan unlikable. I wish they would have maybe pulled back on that a little bit, made it a little bit more of a mystery for a bit longer. Maybe let Darcy be the one who has all of the information and we're more so wondering what's going on. I don't know how you guys felt, but in my opinion, I thought it was a little too obvious what might be happening behind the scenes. However, to me, that didn't take away from how the suspense was in this movie, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Um, I think this movie is definitely worth a watch. I don't know that I would be adding it to my personal horror movie collection. However, with spooky season coming up, if you have nothing else on the list to watch and you're just kind of like, I just want a good popcorn flick, something I can sit down and watch, it's going to be great. You'd love this. It might also be a good movie to watch with somebody who's not a big horror fan, as maybe an introductory to horror film. I wasn't blown away by this movie, but I did enjoy it. I did actually like this movie better than Long Legs, which was another movie that I had watched not that long ago. But that's why I did on the YouTube channel ask people which movie they thought was scarier. And I agree. I think the majority last time I checked was saying it was Oddity, and I would have to say Oddity definitely had more of a spooky vibe to me than Longlegs did. But yeah, that'll be wrapping it up for today's video on Oddity. We did this whole breakdown. I might do the formats a little bit different in other videos, not sure yet. Again, I don't usually talk about movies here. We usually play horror games. But if you guys liked this video, drop a like, drop a dislike. Let me know if you liked the video, or if you want to see more of them. We can definitely do more of these in the future. I just really wanted to talk about this movie because I had enough fun with it that I was hoping to see what everyone else thought. But anyway, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.